Hey everyone, it's Aisha White, and I'm here today talking with a special guest. Her name is Michole Washington. We go way back, and I wanted to talk to her today about the topic of how math fits into communication. So, how we communicate and connect through math. And she's a mathematician, she is an educator, and I think that she would be a great authority on talking about that subject. So, Michole, do you want to introduce yourself to everyone watching?
Absolutely. So, hey everyone, my name is Michole Washington. So, I'm a math education doctoral student at the University of Michigan, and I conduct research about Black students' experiences in undergraduate math courses. But before I even got into grad school, I've always loved math. I studied math in undergrad at Georgia Institute of Technology in Atlanta, and it has led me to even create businesses out of it. So I do own an escape room company, and I offer a lot of mentorship to a lot of other Black and brown students out there who want to get into STEM or need help.
Awesome. So I'll start by asking you, when did you first fall in love with math, and were there key individuals that played a role in you falling in love with math?
Absolutely. It always takes me back. I've told this story a lot, actually, last couple of months too, because it just hit me that it happened. I remember being in third grade. I was at Bethune Elementary out in College Park, Georgia, and walking down the hallway. I think we were heading to our specials, like our extracurriculars. And we walked past the fifth grade classrooms, and they had these chart papers on the wall, and they were doing fractions. And I had no idea what a fraction was back then. So I remember just walking down the hallway, just thinking to myself, like, what the heck was all those numbers? And why were they written like that? I just want to know more about it. So like after school, I would walk back to the wall and just look at it. It's like, what is this? So I started asking more questions and like learning about it. I would find books. My mom was partially working on a degree at the time, so she had an algebra book at home. And the algebra book was way beyond explaining fractions. And I remember every day I would just go in that book and just try to understand different things all the time. Like I'm trying to just figure out what all these things are. And from there, it just started to spiral. It really took an upturn when I was in fifth grade, Miss Tarla Williams. And to this day, I've still been trying to find this woman. I haven't found her on Facebook or anything. So it's like, who knows where she is in the world.
Right.
But I used to do my homework in advance all the time in class. Like when she would assign it, I would just do it right there because I understood it because I was always looking at math.
Yeah.
So to keep me from working not to keep me from working ahead, but to encourage the fact that I was always working ahead, she went next door to the middle school and checked out a sixth grade math book, brought it back, and she let me start assigning myself my own homework. And she was like, just tell me what you want to learn this week from this book and pick what problems you think you want to try out, and I'll pick some too. And every time we start our math section, you go to the back of the classroom and just do what you do. And that's what I would do every day. It was just, all right, I'm just gonna learn this sixth grade math then. And from there, that was it. She really initiated that.
That's really cool, I have to say, because she took that extra step to go find that book, and she recognized that you had that interest and that talent, and she did the work to basically allow you to flourish, because everybody doesn't do that. I know I've been in educational settings where the type of care that needs to be taken is not taken, and it's like they take the easy route, and that damages a child's future. And so that's huge.
And it's like thinking of some teachers may feel like if a student's working too far ahead that they just have to sit and do nothing.
Right.
Like, well, that's it. And she was like, well, clearly she teaches herself already, and she's learning it perfectly fine by herself. So here, do what you gotta do, and we'll just do what we do up here. And I think eventually, after she started that with me, as the months went on, 2 or 3 more students, she started to push back there to start working with me also. Because like they were looking at me and was like, I want to work ahead. So now she had 2, 3 students who were just doing sixth grade math in fifth grade. And I wasn't like a standard. No one was telling her to do it. Like that's how a lot of things should be.
Yeah, definitely. Y'all are assigning your own homework.
Right.
That's really cool. So you, like you mentioned earlier, you're an alumna of Georgia Institute of Technology in Atlanta, Georgia. All right, sorry, like tongue tied. And you're currently pursuing your PhD at the University of Michigan. We talked a little bit before we started recording about University of Michigan, like the the weather and the environment and things like that. So I wonder, do you ever find yourself overwhelmed by your studies or your environment? You're away from home, and you're studying challenging topics, and so yeah, do you find yourself getting overwhelmed? And then if you do you have a specific coping method for it?
I am overwhelmed all the time. So yes, I am always overwhelmed. And a huge part of it, I started to realize that I've, I've been affected the last couple of winters by seasonal affective disorder. So
Ah,
that's a disorder where if you are used to being in the sun more often and getting all that vitamin D, if you're moving somewhere like Michigan, where we have, right now is actually a sunny day, but typically the sky is really gray,
yeah.
which means that we're not getting direct sunlight as much as usual.
Mhm.
And that can be really dampening on the mood.
Right.
So one way I've coped is by getting a happy lamp. But these are like these lights that emit like the same intensity as the sun, or similar intensity, that you can sit in front of for like a couple of minutes every day. So
Wow. I didn't even
that's
know
a
it existed. You like
right,
it?
until you move somewhere like here and it's like, wow, I need a happy lamp. That's one way. Another way, it's been interesting. So like I said, I did just applied math in undergrad, my bachelor's. That was all I did.
Okay.
But for my PhD, I'm doing math education, which is more of a social science. But I'm also working on my master's in applied mathematics, which is, again, just the math. From me doing my doctoral coursework, which are education based,
Right.
and the fact that I study Black students in undergraduate math courses, my research has become very therapeutic with the way that I go into my math courses.
Huh.
So I decided when I came in that when I did my master's, I was only going to do one course a semester so that I can take my time to learn the math, since I know I want to teach it in the future.
Yeah.
And from reading the literature and just learning about all the different factors that can really like affect any student, like the stress, the anxiety and things, it made me more aware of what could be going on when I was overwhelmed in my math courses. So in a way, now that I'm in these advanced courses, all the things that would have made me like really anxious in undergrad in class and nervous about being the only Black person, it's not there as strong because I also see the bigger picture of what's going on now.
Okay.
It's like I can see the issues with how this professor was teaching, and I can be critical about it because I understand like this is a whole power structure situation going on here that doesn't have to be this way, but it is this way.
Yeah.
And I can reflect on it more and be like, look, that has nothing to do with you. That says nothing about you. Do what you got to do and you'll be all right. So that's been a strong like coping strategy, and has also helped me with my research, kind of like looking at myself.
Wow. That's really interesting. So the work that you're doing and the research you're doing has in some way helped teach you about your experience, kind of like, yeah, that's really interesting.
And me question a lot of things, question so many things that I took for granted.
Yeah.
Well, I took for granted, but I just wouldn't have been aware of before.
Yeah. Did that surprise you as you were doing the research and it was like, oh, wait, this is making sense, and you're finding the why behind things?
Yeah, or reading it like, whoa, this sounds like me. Were they studying me? Was I in a research and I didn't know it? Absolutely.
Oh man, that's really interesting. That's really smart. I love that. I love hearing that.
It was my chance though. I didn't expect for that to happen. Like I knew I wanted to go to education, but I didn't expect to be read like that. But it has helped tremendously in being so aware, which is why I try to do like interviews like this and podcasts to explain to people like how that stress and anxiety, it is real. You're not crazy. Like something may feel wrong, and you're absolutely right. No matter what that teacher says, that is you. It's not always you. Yeah. Actually, more times than not, it's the instructor. It's math as a classroom. It has nothing to do with you. But a lot of time it's, well, you didn't get the grade you needed on that, or you didn't study enough. Well, what did the teacher do that can really help you in the way that you learn and what you need? Not just like a general, anybody needs to learn this.
Have you had experiences where you've had to like, I guess, step forward and talk to an instructor beyond what they were doing in class and maybe address an issue like that?
Ooh, there's been more recent times, kind of, sort of. I'm actually currently in a situation like that that's kind of my own personal experiment.
Mm-hmm.
So my professor for this class I'm in, I won't say it since I'm in the class now, but I'm not a huge fan of the way she teaches because she can be kind of condescending when she's in class. And I picked up on it a lot that she'll say, oh, you can ask questions in class. But then when you ask a question in class, she's like, it's obvious. I'm like, look, you can't say ask questions and then do things like that. That's contradictory and make people uncomfortable. You like disrupted the whole space now.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've done, I've gone to her office hours and I'll just say little things to like just learn more about who she is, so she can also understand that maybe you should learn a little more about who your students are.
Oh.
I'll ask her like, oh, I see that you have I saw a flyer in the hallway that you have a talk coming up. What's it about? And having her talk about it. Like, oh, do you enjoy doing that? She'll explain it. And I'll stop there. Like, I don't want to dive too deep, but every week I come in, I'm just asking more questions. Like, oh, so how was your week? Are you feeling better? You were sick last week. And then eventually she started asking me questions. I'm like, oh yeah, well, I do education, and kind of just poking around the idea, like things are more comfortable if you will just treat people as people. You don't have to be this instructor and authority all the time for us to learn.
I like that. Yeah, that's really smart. Getting inside the mind.
So it's a little experiment. We'll see. I may never see, but hopefully this makes an impact for her in future courses.
No, I think that's really clever though, because I think that sometimes people come from a place of defense, and especially in different positions like an instructor, if you have students that come to you and they're combative, or you have a past experience, even though you shouldn't, I think naturally people apply whatever that negative experience was to all of the experiences that happen afterwards. And so it's like almost like they're surprised and pleasantly surprised that someone's coming to them, asking them about their life, about what they're doing, and just looking at them as a human being, because they are, and they want to be treated that way, but they're on the defensive. And so
right, you're so right, how people will just apply the same thing across. And I'm guilty of it too. It's kind of like a natural thing to try to do, but being aware of it is what really matters.
Yeah. That's awesome, though. I think that's really, I applaud you for doing that and for you putting in the effort.
Got to.
Yeah, I think it'll benefit both of y'all in the end. Let's hope. We'll see. I'll check in with you.
And doing it also made me more comfortable in the class as well.
Yeah.
To the same note, for anyone who's watching, I want to offer this advice as well, is if you're in college, is trying to find even that one person who's in a faculty position who can really go to bat for you, who can be there as a sounding board and not just see you as just a student, but as a whole person. Because there's one person in our math department who has been that for me. She's the associate chair of the department. We connected in other ways, and we're really connected socially because we used to do a kickball team together for the math department. But after that, it's like whenever I do have an issue with a course, or if I feel like there's a mixed match with me and a professor that doesn't work well, she is very quick to like, all right, well, let's find what you do need. Let's come up with a plan to see what you can do instead to still get to your same goal and not like dumb it down. Because that's what a lot of people will try to do, is like dumb you down to things. She's like, no, you do know things. So let's figure out what you do know and where you fit, and we'll fix it from there. And she has the power to do so. She's an associate chair. So it's like, if we can find those people that can have that connection for us and be an advocate, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, definitely. That's really neat. And I like you saying that, because that almost gives people permission or confidence to go and seek somebody out that way. Because I know in my undergrad studies, I didn't always feel that I necessarily had an advocate. There were some really great professors and couple that still, I feel I can reach out to and continue to communicate with years later, but didn't necessarily know that I had a place to do that, if that makes sense. And so that's encouraging. I hope that encourages students that are watching.
I didn't know either in undergrad. I noticed a lot of undergrad was, another realization I've had recently was that now that I'm doing an education degree, the transition from doing school for the sake of school and being in school for the sake of me wanting to learn and gain knowledge.
Okay.
I realized a lot of my success in undergrad was from me being a good student. I was good at doing school. I know how to talk to professors, get on the good side, and make sure that they understand, like, if I miss a couple points, you can help me out because I'm always in office hours. I understand, like, doing a bunch of homework problems just to make sure I get something. That was me doing school for the sake of schooling. Whereas now it's self-guided knowledge in a lot of ways. It's like I'm learning these things because I want to learn it. So I'm asking more questions based off my own interests and not the professor's interests.
Yeah.
And what it looks like to be a good student. So that's another like shift of like different ways to think about just school overall, doing it for yourself versus for the sake of school. However, I'm in a privileged position to do that because for me, doing the master's, the grades don't matter as much.
Okay.
Because I'm still going to have a doctorate. So I do have to give that disclaimer that I understand that sometimes you do just have to do school for school because especially grades are on the line.
Yeah, that's true. Because everybody's in different positions. So that makes sense. And that's interesting because I do think that's so true. People are attending school for different reasons. If it's like because I'm good at it, I realize I'm good at school, I'm going to school for school, but then because there's that point where you get out and you're trying to figure out, okay, now what direction is my life going in and where am I going from here? So there's different approaches.
It's hard given just the structure of our K through 12 and university system. Like it's hard to not just do it for the sake of school because it's not really built in a way that's, they claim it's for knowledge, but it's not structured enough to just have pursuit of knowledge.
Yeah, quite honestly, yes, I agree. So I was thinking about you and I was thinking about the film Hidden Figures. I don't know, have you ever seen it? Yeah.
Absolutely. I have the book right here, right next to me.
So in that movie, the key characters, they played an integral role in the advancement of society. These Black women through their education, math and science, the STEM field. You are a minority in America, and you're also a minority in the STEM field. So I'm wondering, have you encountered challenges that came along with that? Just experiences that you may have had that you recognize over the years.
Yeah, and the one experience that always comes to mind, I don't know if it's more of like my own internal issues that I used to have that I've since grown from.
Yeah.
But I think it was the summer between my sophomore and junior year, I did a REU. So that's a research experience for undergraduates. Mm-hmm. And I did it at the Mathematical Science Research Institute, also known as MSRI, that's out in Berkeley, California. Okay. I did their undergraduate program, so it's the MSRI UP, and I'm saying all that in case someone's watching and they're interested in it. So MSRI UP, I did their summer research program out in Berkeley. They pay you to go out there for 5 to 6 weeks to conduct a research project with other students in math or computer science. And after the program, they pay for you to go to 2 conferences to present your research. So that was my first research experience ever. And it was the experience that let me know that I did not want to do a PhD in just math. I hated it. I hated socially, cool. The work we had to do, hated every bit of it, mostly because I was anxious all the time. Okay. They put us into like these groups of 3 students, and I was in a group with 2 guys. And when I look back on it, they really were cool guys. Like, we're still friends to this day, but during that time, they were so intimidating for me because they were also a year or 2 years older than me. So they didn't know more math just because they were further along in their program. Right. But from my perspective, it was like, these guys are really smart. And I keep hearing that Black folks don't do well in STEM. And that's another issue I had that we can come back to. It's when people say things like that. Yeah. But I'm aware of these things, so it must be me. I must be the problem. And I look back and realize that when our research advisor he was really trying to help me and give me smaller tasks to do that were contributing. But I was just so stressed and anxious that I couldn't even do simple tasks because it was always just a scary situation every time. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm going to go up to this building and we're going to have to do this work for the project. I'm going to sit there and listen to them do all this stuff that I don't understand. Mm-hmm. I try asking questions, but they answer and I don't understand the answers they're giving me. So it was 5 weeks of just stress. But I did make lifelong friends and mentors through it who really are still in my life today. Mm-hmm. But it also opened me up to the idea of pursuing a career in mathematics education. Because after that experience, like, okay, I don't want to research just math. I don't think this is for me, but I do still love math. So what else could I do?
Mm-hmm.
And math education started to seem more and more interesting to me. So that's one aspect. So then to get back to the statement I was just making about when folks say, so when I went into Georgia Tech and I did a summer program called Challenge,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a prep program.
Mm-hmm.
They would keep reminding us that, oh, Black folks don't do this well in this subject and this at Georgia Tech. They tend to not finish at this rate, making us aware. So that's why this program is here to help fill a gap.
Right.
The issue with that is that I went into tech not necessarily caring or knowing about any of these things, because I went to an all Black high school. There were folks who were good at math. It was just a way of life. But now you're telling me before I entered this predominantly white institution that has a 6% Black population that I'm already less likely to do well. That's scary as hell, which now has to be anxious about my ability to do math, and which I shouldn't have been anxious at all because I was more than capable already. Right. But I am going to listen to you because you know this university and I'm only 18. So you must be right. And this is what I research. This is exactly the area that kind of researches like how some of these programs, what we do in the early years, can have these unintended negative effects on students, making them anxious about things that may be better off that you're not telling them. Well, how about you just say that you're bound to do well, that you're bound to be fine. Here are some things to help you. And that way you don't have to feel like you have to fulfill this huge task for the whole Black community.
Right.
One person.
Like
really
it's like all of it, the weight was weighing on your shoulders. It's like, okay, Michole, you got to do it for the entire culture because we don't do so well.
Along with all these other students, I'm looking around like, so wait, we're all not likely to be here in a couple of years? What do you mean?
Yeah.
It's like, so now I have this self-doubt that starts to kind of like snowball and get bigger and bigger over the years. And I'm just now crushing, ironically, in a place that does have snowballs. So it's just, being careful with like the way that language is powerful. When you put labels to things, it's powerful. And being careful in the way that we describe students. One way that I've changed my language around is instead of calling like Black and Latinx students underrepresented or minority, is underestimated. Because that's what we are. We are underestimated beyond anything else. And that's what I choose to use instead is that. I'm talking about underestimated students, underestimated communities.
Yeah.
That's all that's been done here is underestimating us.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you what kind of changes you would like to see in the STEM field. So, I mean, that sounds like that kind of folds right into that question in and of itself.
Absolutely. It's also the way how math can just, here goes a good example of what I don't want to see, but I see it often. I was a teaching assistant for a class over the last few years, for a semester though. And it was a small class and there was only one Black student in the class. So the students for this, they are meant to be future math teachers. So this was future teachers, and they had oral assessments as exams that happened 3 times throughout the semester. The first oral exam, this particular student, I wasn't there for hers because I had to go somewhere, but for the instructor, who's a white woman, the student came in very late. It was a rainy day. They only had like a 30-minute time window. And when she came in late, she was like crying and disheveled because she was just upset about a lot of things. And the professor was like, all right, you still got to do the exam. A couple of days later, I reached out to the student because I heard about the situation. And she was like, well, I had a hard time finding parking. And then I know the professor has kids and I felt so bad that I was late. And then I go in there and I'm just like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. All the math left my head. And then I'm crying, and this professor still has the camera rolling. She had a camera in the class because she was recording the oral assessments to grade them later, which means you have a video of this Black girl stressed out, disheveled, crying on camera, and you still asked her to take the exam.
Right.
If that was your own daughter, if that was a sister, a friend, what would you have done differently?
Right.
Maybe we can continue this exam on Monday. Or, let's talk for a second because you seem really stressed out. For some reason in math, there are a lot of people who are so cutthroat that it's like they forget all humanity. Like it just goes out the window. And just beyond me that you can let someone just cry on camera and you offer no other source of humanity for them in that moment because it's math.
Right.
It's just, it's
Wow.
beyond me.
That's powerful. Yeah, no. I love that you're applying the human element to it because, yeah, when people think of math, I think they think of logic only and not applying emotion, even though we're all humans and we're capable of, both. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And math is objective.
Mhm.
Yes. 1 + 1 is usually equal to 2, depending on what you're doing. It's 2. But the culture around math is not objective. You
Yeah.
still have teachers, you have students, you have a society that's always going to be impacting a class. Research has shown how there was some study done in the 80s of 6 first grade classrooms that showed that the teachers were assessing the Black girls, their math ability. They were more likely to assess them on non-academic qualities versus actual academic qualities, meaning they were assessing 5-6-year-olds on whether they can do math or not based off their behavior,
Wow.
not based off their ability to do math, but
Wow.
using that as a judgment. And it's like starting that early, first graders, that's wild. That
Yeah.
you're already starting some type of like, I don't know, just an issue that can build up over time if it's not like intervened. So there's a lot of differences I would just love to see as far as just that humanity in math classroom. And that's K through 12 and college.
Right. Wow.
Especially college though, because that part is such a shift in what we're used to from K through 12 that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that for me, math was for most of my school career. I think math was a challenge for me. I know it was like I left one county and moved to another, and that was where I realized it was like elementary, and I realized that like the kids at this new school were were learning at a different rate and more rapid rate than I was in elementary, because I was doing really well and like in these like gifted classes in elementary school, and then I went over to this new county and was like, oh wait, we weren't learning this yet. And it was almost like this expectation that everyone knew and everybody was on the same level. And so from the beginning, or from that early age, I felt that I was behind, but I was still able to have like advanced classes. And it was really in high school when I really, really struggled my, I think, junior and senior year. And it's like when you have this you have this struggle, and then you're thinking like, I don't think I'm very good at this, then it starts to turn into this negative point of view. And that's what I ended up doing, was developing this negative point of view when it came to math. And I'm like, well, I shy away from it. I don't like math, not good at it. And just like making that statement rather than maybe taking the steps to go further and trying to improve my skills. It was rather like, I'm just not good at it, and accepted that. So what would you suggest, or how would you suggest changing people's attitude toward math? Because I think a lot of people have a negative attitude toward math. If you feel that you're not good at it, then immediately you're like, I don't do math.
I'm not going to touch that. Well, not at all. I'm not going to calculate no tip or no receipt. I'm not going to,
Yeah.
nothing. There's so many things to that. One is remembering that you are the student and education is supposed to be about you, not the math. And that's, I guess that's more of a charge for educators, is to remember that, like, yes, you're a math teacher, but the whole point of your role is to help students learn. It's not this speed race with math content. Like, I understand standardized testing is there, but we have to find a different solution that doesn't make it like, oh, we have to get chapter 2, 3, and 4 before students are even comfortable with chapter 1. It's just, it doesn't, that part really sucks. But I guess for like individual students, is remembering that they are worth more than just the math. And there's a lot of different things running through my head. One thing is people who do end up leaving STEM, which I don't like the word leaving because that makes it so negative. Sometimes choosing a different career path is the thing that you need. If what brings you joy, what makes you happy, why stick with this other choice if it makes you stressed and anxious? There's nothing wrong with that. So start there. If you do choose to do something else, that's perfectly fine. That doesn't mean that you're not good at math. You can be good at math and still choose to do something else. But also, I don't know. Yeah, I think on a larger scale, it's just remembering that you're more than the content itself. and finding ways to deal with the stress and anxiety, even though that definitely should be the school's responsibility, in my opinion. A more practical way, like if you're someone who's in a math course right now and you need to figure out, like, how can I start to deal with this? Something I've started doing is realizing that math symbols and stuff, yes, they can explain a lot of things, but there's a lot of words that we would typically use when we're talking to someone that helps us understand, like, content or concepts that we don't see when we're writing math. So what I started doing is when I am thinking through problems, I write full paragraphs and pages of my thinking, not just the symbols. I'm saying, okay, well, I think that this theorem works here because this theorem mentions this thing, and I know the definition of this is that, and not leaving it in my head. So when you leave it in your head, we're putting a higher capacity of workload on our mind to think through things, which means you can't remember as much. But if you write it, it gets out of your head, so you can do a more like conscious and consistent flow of thoughts and see connections. And I'm talking about even down to if you're in 4th, 5th grade, maybe learning about factoring. I can't remember what 4th and 5th graders learn, but learn about factoring. It's writing full sentences, not just writing parentheses and the symbols, full sentences that are informal for you. Like, this is how you would talk, not trying to be particular about language. It's how you would talk to yourself, explain it to yourself. Yeah. It's a good way to kind of track your thinking and also notice that you know a lot. People forget that too, that you actually know more than you think you do. Yeah. But classes, the way they go, you go in and they start talking about things and you realize you don't remember this and that, and they act as if you didn't come in knowing things already, like you didn't take math classes in the past.
That makes a lot of sense. Is that at the core of show your work? Because I know, like, growing up, the instructor was always like, well, show the work, how you got to that answer. And I guess in my mind was like, that's just extra work to have to write it out. But
and usually, like, when they say show your work, they're like, oh, just show the calculations that you did.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm talking about writing a narrative about what you're doing as a way to help you just think through the ideas and capture what you do know. Because that can be more motivating than just writing the calculations. Because when you look back at the calculations, like if you have your notes, that doesn't necessarily remind you what you were doing. You just see calculations. It's like, I don't know why I did this, but if you would have written it out like words, you would be able to read back and say, oh, right, that is why I was writing this. That's why I did this.
That's really
it takes more time, but it's worth it.
Yeah. I like that idea. I don't think I've ever considered that before, even as somebody that writes. Like, I was like,
yeah. And I promise you, it's something I just started doing like a couple months ago. And I said the same thing, like, wow, I don't know why I never thought about doing this until now.
That might help a lot of people. I really hope it does, because we all approach it from different, areas in the way that our brain works. And I just think that makes a lot of sense. And you're just talking to yourself. It's almost like journaling for math. Like you're writing out all the thoughts that are in your head and how you arrived at that. I like that.
It really, I think it started to stick out a lot this semester, how helpful it was, because my professor, she has handwritten lecture notes that she uploads. So I just got an iPad, which has changed my entire life. I promise it's changed my entire life. So what I'll do is I'll download her notes. So when she's doing the lecture, I don't have to worry as much about trying to write everything she's saying. Yeah. I can fill in little details because she already had lecture notes. And that's when I realized it was like, all the things that she's doing, there's so much more information here that it's hard to capture when I'm just looking at this. Like, there's extra words and sentences I need here to connect these ideas for me. And it was like, maybe that's why writing all this stuff is really helpful. Yeah. Because she's not just writing symbols, she's saying a lot of other words around her writing this stuff on the board. A lot of other words that I actually need to understand this, not just symbols. That's not helpful by itself. Yeah. So that's when it was like, real, like, you got to keep just writing things out as you think about them.
You're definitely on to something there. It's like light bulb moment in my mind, because I'm like, I know that was a challenge for me too. If I was opening up a book and I was just seeing the symbols, and especially if I was on my own and not in a classroom and I'm doing homework and I'm not understanding it, I just felt at a disadvantage, because I was like, I don't know how I need to get to this place. And there was no, instruction, no written notes as to how to arrive at this, this method, and you're just looking at symbols. And so it was like I felt lost. And so
Right.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Do you think there are any, well, I'm sure you do think that, but do you think there are any benefits of providing access to mathematics education and tutoring those who struggle with it? I guess, what benefits have you identified in in educating others?
One thing I've identified for sure was that, we see a lot of universities, specifically predominantly white institutions, where majority of those succeeding are white or Asian, in which our race can be connected to our socioeconomic status. So a lot of times these are more affluent people, which means that when their kids were in K through 12, they probably received a lot of tutoring and other additional resources outside of regular schooling, meaning that a lot of times we're comparing apples to oranges. Right. If a student does not have the financial resources to get tutoring and stuff, and to have that consistent contact with the content, of course, they may not be as rigorous and used to doing math as someone who does have those resources all the time. Right. Because someone is getting more contact time with it. So there's huge benefits to the tutoring and whatnot, which is why it's great that there's a lot of organizations, companies, YMCAs and whatnot that do offer free tutoring. I do believe it's not necessarily always the best tutoring, but I much rather the work is starting somewhere and that there is something offered out there to begin with. Yeah. Because when I think back to the way that I learned math, I spent a lot of summers going to the library by myself and getting math books for the next school year to just do math because I just enjoyed it. But when you think about it, that's the equivalent of someone who has a tutor maybe over the summer or going to do a summer camp, and they're constantly exposed to the content all the time. I was always exposing myself to the content. Summer is that time where a lot of students forget things because it's 2-3 months of not doing anything at all after 9 months of doing it all the time. But I was spending the time doing it. People who have the financial resources were spending the time doing it. So it makes a huge difference. But it's also, again, that human part, because tutors it has to be the right match. It has to be a tutor who can understand a student, who they are and wants to get to know them. And it's not just there for math, for the sake of math. That's always my consistent thing. It's not to do things just for the sake of math. That means nothing. We got to do it for the sake of individuals, because that's what actually matters. Right. Yeah. Yeah, so that exposure is the hugest benefit of this math education and tutoring or any other type of supplemental resources. Now we're in the age of YouTube and all these other places where we are starting to see more educational things come out. Not as much. I hope one day I will. I ain't got the time right now, so I'm hoping someone else is out there working on it. But yeah, it makes a difference having that consistent contact, because you're just, I don't know, it can deal with fear also. The more you see it, the less scary it may be. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And it's important, the note that you made, that for many students, it's not the apples and oranges comparison, and that it's not necessarily everybody playing on the same field, because some people have that access to additional, education, tutoring outside of your window of time when you're enrolled in school from year to year. So yeah, that's important. I remember my first proofwriting course in undergrad, which really sucked. That course was, to this day, it was very unfair just across the board how Georgia Tech allowed that to be a course, because there wasn't a formal proofwriting course before my first proof course. So for people who don't know, if you think back to when you took a geometry class where it'll say a statement and you have to prove that that statement is true using different things about shapes, you have to do proofs for everything in math, down to why addition works, to even more complex theorems that are helping us send spaceships out into the galaxy. It's that you have to be able to have written proofs that are irrefutable, that no one could say is wrong. But we were expected to take a proof class without learning how to write proofs formally. My high school, we never did anything that was proof related, and geometry is still a weak point for me. So I didn't do proofs then because we didn't have a consistent instructor when I was in high school for geometry. Mm-hmm. So there are people in my class who, one, I knew they went to North Fulton School. So anyone who's in Atlanta knows the difference between North Fulton and South Fulton schools and how there's a lot of disparities there. Yeah. So they definitely had way more exposure to proof writing already, and I had zero. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I'm expected to take this course, and this is like an introductory course for the rest of this degree program. But clearly there's a bunch of people in here who already have, like, they are further ahead of me in this in a very like inequitable way. Just because of the high schools we went to. However, everyone expects for us to know the same thing, which makes no sense at a university, especially when universities are saying, oh, we attract people from 900 countries. We attract people from Mars. Okay, so why does it make sense to assume that we all know the same thing? That alone should just walk on eggshells about that fact there, that a lot of courses do. You should know this by now. No, false. You cannot make assumptions like that.
Yeah, that does lead to that negative point of view. And that sounds like me in elementary school and going into it at an early age and being like, I don't know this, but that expectation that, no, everybody's at the same level. It's like, that's just not reality. So I know that you were actually providing tutoring courses, right, to students for a while. Do you still do that?
No, not anymore because of time commitment.
Okay, yeah.
I want to, but I cannot.
Well, during that time, did you witness any success stories? Like, were there students that were struggling at it, and you saw them succeed in whatever endeavor, whether it was like them graduating or going on to graduate, or maybe there was some sort of, I don't know, career field they were looking to go into, and you saw them progress? You could just speak to that.
Absolutely. I can't even think of no specific stories because I tutored so many students. I think about that all the time, that I was really just on a roll for like 2 years. So I have had a lot of students, but I do know, like, from updates from people, if they reach out to me, of folks graduating from high school, entering into college, especially some students who, when I used to tutor, actually, no, there is one student, Aria, where she struggled a lot in high school, and I really loved her and her mom. We all worked very well together. And now she's at Spelman pursuing a math degree.
Nice.
So it was like, back then she didn't consider it at all, but now she is working on an actual math degree. So that was amazing.
Yeah. For somebody to develop that type of interest and love for it to the point where they're studying it, then definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you know how, because I worked real intimately with my students. So, like, I know where their struggles were. Right. And it's like, thinking back to her, it's like, we had a lot of work to do, but she had that motivation for it. And that's what really, I think, has gotten her here, is this, she'll do the work. She'll struggle through it, but figure it out, which she shouldn't have to struggle. That's a whole nother story, but this of like education, but she's there now. And there's a lot of other students who I know have gone on to do something like in engineering or math or any other sciences. So it's always nice to hear those stories. At the end of the day, though, the priority for me was, at that current moment, if you're trying to study for exam, all right, let's get you prepared for that exam then. Right. So that's what's pressing right
now. So can you tell me, or tell us more about what your I guess current projects are that you got going on? I know you have the stimulation escape room. Just talk more about that. I want people to know the things that you're involved in and the ways that you are spreading the gospel about mathematics education to underestimated groups of people.
Absolutely. So Stimulation Escape Room is one of my newest ventures, one of my newest and funnest babies, where I am creating escape rooms for middle and high school students. For anyone who hasn't experienced escape room before, these are puzzle experiences, but they're really involved puzzle experiences that are fit to a theme. And you and a group of people, usually about 8 to 10 people, have about 45 minutes to escape out of this scenario. So what I've done is create these real world scenarios, like maybe you're going into a doctor's office or to a cafeteria, something that seems really not adventurous, but hiding a lot of puzzles and activities, and there's a storyline that leads you to having to use STEM skills to figure out how to escape the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really involved. It's a lot of fun to do. I'm actually on the market right now looking for some project managers. So if anybody's out there and wants to reach out, please do, because it's a lot to manage people. So yeah, the escape room is a lot of fun. It kind of hits at when students are asking, when will I ever use this in the real world?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's put you in a real world situation and see where you would need to use this.
Yeah.
And we try as hard as possible to stay true to actual concepts and how they work, or actual scenarios and how things could actually play out. We try to stay away from fictional things with math and science, because we want this to be educational and something where you can actually apply in a real world situation.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all a game at the end of the day. So nothing to be stressed out with. It is something to have fun with. So yeah. I think, what else am I doing? That's like the primary thing besides my research, which is me working through my prelims right now.
Okay. Yeah. That's a beautiful concept, I think, marrying that idea of math with fun, because everybody doesn't necessarily associate the two. And then also, I think that is like the one question that I would always hear, like throughout my math career or school career, was like, how are we going to use this in real life? Y'all, y'all are teaching us these, forms of math that when would I ever need it, to the point where it's like become memes online. And it's like, the teacher said I would, use this. And I never use that math in real life. And so you're literally being like, here is an example.
Here's it, where you use it, right? And we do more than just math, because math can't explain everything that goes on in our world. Mm-hmm. So we tap into any science, engineering, technology that can be used in a situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, we tap into other big piece that I'm still been trying to work in poetically into when I describe the escape room, is that every room that we create is related to a particular social justice topic. Huh. So when you're going through that experience, it may not be apparent in the beginning what's going on, but by the end of it, you may have formed some opinion or some judgment about an issue that is going on in the world or in your community.
That's really cool. I was thinking about the fact that we're, having this conversation about education, about underestimated groups of people, and the fact that it's Black History Month. And I recently traveled to Little Rock for work, and it's, I went to the Central High Museum where they talk about the Little Rock Nine, these African-American students that were integrating in high school. And it was a huge challenge just for them to be able to get through the doors of the high school. And I just admire so much their passion to learn, to the point where it was dangerous. It was, a risk to their own well-being to get up and go to school. And it should never be like that. Like, why, what I mean? This whole, it should never be a challenge that somebody would want a group of people to not learn. It's a human right, and so looking at that and seeing, decades later, a drive and a passion to want to learn, and then a drive and a passion to share that with other people, I just think is amazing. So I'm like, like when I see the things you're doing, I'm like, I'm just happy for you and excited for you, and excited for anybody that has that type of drive.
And you bring up a good point too, though, about being able to just encourage that want of knowledge in students, like the drive to want to gain it. Mm-hmm. Another issue or critique I have about the way that math is taught in particular is how we drive the motivation. Mm-hmm. Like, we start off by teaching students you need to add, you need to do this, you need to do that. And we can't answer that question when we use it in the real world, because a lot of times we don't know when you'll use it in the real world.
Yeah.
But imagine if things like project-based type situations, which is really popular now, mm-hmm. if all the math we learned was flipped the other way, where you do see the end goal, you see where it could be, and now we're going to sit here and break apart all the different pieces of it over time, mm-hmm. to understand how this whole machine runs, how this works, how this system works. That kind of offers that, again, it's the motivation, because now you know where you're going. It's not like I'm just learning things for the hell of it. It's like, now we're talking about this thing, and I'm trying to figure out how this works.
Right.
So I wish more math was taught that way. I am amongst a community of folks who really do believe that a lot of the math that we learn on this advanced level in grad school, the concepts are not hard. Kids already apply these concepts naturally, but we throw all these symbols and language on it to make it, that does make it sound difficult. No, you can't show it to a child in this form with all these if-then statements and theorems. No, you can't do that because that's just too much. But what you can do is allude to like the analogies of what this is talking about. Like students understand adding, they do it already. They know how to put things together and make it into a larger whole or to take things away. There's a lot of ways we talk about that in more abstract ways in advanced mathematics that makes it general for like all types of numbers. But that's not hard to explain to a child. It's kind of like you have, I don't know, like a bucket of Legos here. You do some add and subtracting over here. You could have a cookie over here. You can add and subtract different types of cookies. That's kind of the idea of the abstract mathematics that we learn at this level that I'm on, that we just make seem so difficult. And it's like, you're making it difficult by choice. It doesn't have to be difficult.
So what I'm hearing is, what I'm gathering, if I'm thinking of mathematics and communication, is the conversation is changing the conversation around math, around STEM as a whole. So the science, the technology, the engineering, all of it. If we can change the conversation around it, then I think people will feel more capable of doing it, not going into it and being like, all right, y'all, because we historically do not do well in this. So go, it's like,
exactly.
Yeah, I love that. I love all you said. These points you made are really clever, things I had not considered before. I'm impressed.
Thank you for spreading the knowledge. That's why we need you to help spread.
Yeah, I think that, I've had conversations with like a friend that I've had, and she's doing like social work, and it's so interesting when it comes to diverse groups of people and how that plays into things. And so it's not necessarily from a STEM standpoint, but just education and the approach when it comes to different groups of people. So that type of stuff fascinates me. So
Absolutely. Yeah, social work, that's a good field also. It all plays a role in all this still.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess with that, we can wrap things up. I want you to, I'm going to link through to places where people can find you and learn more about your simulation, escape rooms, and more about you as a person in the description area. But I guess you can let people know if you're comfortable with it, whatever your handles are for social media or where they can find you, website, podcast.
Absolutely. Y'all can find me at Mathematical on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So that's math, MATHEMATICICHOLE. So that's a little portmanteau between my name and mathematical. So Mathematical. So that's on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also find me via email at mathematical@gmail.com. I'm usually bouncing around all those spaces.
Nice. Thank you so much for sitting down, taking time to talk to me, Michole. And I just want to say to everybody watching, I hope that you were encouraged. I hope you learned something. I mean, I think I definitely did. So I think this is a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. And if you like it, then give this video a like. And if you want to see more content like this, then subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Bye, everybody.
This is awesome. Awesome.